I've had several people asking me about it, so I think it's about time I did a little video of it. This is my homemade micro off-road camper. It is, I guess you can call it a foamy hybrid. The exterior of it is a 2-inch foam insulation wrapped with canvas that's glued on and then painted. Inside, it has a structural wood frame, a plywood floor, and paneled walls. So it's not 100% a foamy because it's not entirely foam built. It is mostly a foamy with a skeletal structure added onto it. What's up, guys? I appreciate you for checking out this video. I wanted to say a few things before we got into the heart of it. And the main thing is if you're here for a detailed parts list of this camper, plans for this camper with dimensions, a detailed how-to step-by-step instructional video, this might not be the video for you. It is in no way a how-to video or the correct way to do things video. It is simply just a how I did it video. When I started building this, I had a fairly limited time frame where I really just needed it done and ready to go out on the road. My goal was 5 to 7 weeks, and it ended up taking me about 9 weeks, I think, total. So I didn't have a whole lot of time to sit there and do step-by-step videos, detailed videos of everything that I did. So I ended up just basically setting up some cameras while I was out there working on things. And by the end of it, I would have a decent bit to put together to give you a general idea on how it was built and to get you maybe a little bit of motivation to start building one on your own. So for me, step one in building the camper was, first of all, determining what I was going to be using it for. There's a wide range of answers for different people. So whether that's entertaining parties, football games, hanging out at the camper all day, only driving to beautifully manicured paved state parks with all the amenities. Would it be 1-night stays, 4-night stays, 5-month stays? Are you going to be using it for multi-purpose, like a place to stay for friends and family when they come by, or things like that? So for me, hunting is a priority, and I love outdoor sports like hiking, and I wasn't going to need something super fancy. I wouldn't be spending a lot of my time during the day in the camper, except for meals. The majority of the time that I would be in the camper, I'd be sleeping. I wanted something that was super simple to set up, that was lightweight, reasonably compact. A lot of the roads that I go down are forest roads and things like that out in the middle of nowhere that have low-cut trees. So I didn't want it to be above my truck or wider than my truck. I wanted the total length to be fairly short. So if I got to the end of one of these roads and I didn't have a turnaround, it was easy for me to unhook it, turn it around by hand, move the car to the other side, hook back up, and pull it out. And I wanted pretty much just the basics. A soft bed to sleep in, moderately temperature controlled, just to take the bite out, because I do use it sometimes in the Arkansas heat. I wanted to be able to handle it in cold, which I have already, around 0-degree temperatures. I wanted pretty decent storage space, because hunting and camping and 4 or 5 day stays tend to end up with a little bit of gear. A lot of us overpack. That's a whole different story. And then I wanted storage space for food and a place to cook. I film a lot when I hunt, so I wanted a decent source of power for recharging devices and cameras and things like that. That's the gist of what I wanted out of this camper. And like I said, that means different things for different people. But I wanted you to understand why I did it the way I did it. So maybe you could decide if that's the way you would want to do it, or even if a camper like this is right for you. The main thing is to get the thought processes going and really deciding what it is you want from this type of camper, because if you're building a compact off-road camper like this, space is pretty important and pretty limited. So we'll go into the next step of how I started to design this and where I went from there. The next step was for me to come up with a very basic design. Honestly, probably took about 3 months, as I would think about it for a few days, make some changes. I eventually bought a trailer, got different dimensions, made some changes again, but the main purpose of the design was for me to determine the thickness of the materials I would be using and what the final dimensions would be. And I can't even say this was the final design, because there are things that I changed on the actual trailer from what you see here in this picture. Honestly, I didn't know what I wanted to end up with. There were multiple times throughout the process that I changed the orientation, or I changed the window location or the door location, and I wanted to get a good feel of the size inside the camper before I decided where I was going to put my shelves and windows and vents and outlets and things like that. So I left that flexibility available so I could really determine what I wanted before it was complete. If you ask me the number one thing that I would change if I could do it all over again, without a doubt the answer would be picking a better trailer. I put a little bit of pressure on myself to get this thing started, so I think I rushed it a little bit. I found this trailer on Craigslist. I think it was only $300. I essentially had to rebuild the entire trailer, change the tongue, had to add fenders, had to replace the axle, the suspension, rebuild the deck on it. So basically I only used the main frame for the bed. It ended up being the main reason why I didn't reach my 7-week goal, because that just took way longer than I had hoped, including getting some help for the welding, since I had never welded before. If I could do it all over again, I would had just bought a more expensive trailer to begin with that suited my needs, because like I said, I think I spent $300 on it, but final cost ended up being closer to $900, so I should have just bought something better to begin with. All right, we're finally on to the fun stuff, building the camper body, or as I call it, the pod. I chose to build the pod separate from the trailer, so if for whatever reason I wanted to remove it from the trailer, I could do so. So throughout this video, you'll notice the trailer is either detached, parts are not aligned. In one section of it, the trailer is not even underneath the pod. Once the pod was completed, I just attached it to the trailer bed and frame using some grade 8 bolts. Quite a few of them, and it's worked really well so far. I mentioned before about making some changes to my final sketch, and one of those big changes was in the original sketch I had the plywood base first and then the insulation inside of the box, which I would eventually have had to add an additional floor. So what I ended up doing was actually making the entire exterior of the pod from the 2-inch foam insulation. So in addition to having a completely unbroken layer of insulation from heat and cold, it would ideally create a complete capsule, so to speak, from any weather or moisture that might work its way past the exterior skin or any doors or windows. And I have to say, I've already had this camper in some pretty decent storms and torrential sustained downpours, and I haven't had a single sign of water making its way to the interior. The insulation panels were joined together using finger joints or box joints, and I saw online that a hot knife was a pretty good way to cut through this foam insulation. So I built a jig and I got to cutting. The jig was pretty simple to use. Once you cut 4 blocks out, you could simply lift it up and move it further down the piece and continue cutting. At first it seemed like a pretty good idea, and it is reasonably easy to do, but after about an hour or 2 hours of cutting these blocks out with a hot knife or a hot wire, I started to realize it was going to take forever. Maybe it was just the hot wire that I was using. I don't know, maybe it wasn't very good, but it took each cut about 1 minute and 20 seconds. And if I remember correctly, it was about 300 of these pieces, which ended up being a total cut time of like 6.5 hours or something like that. And that's not even considering breaks, because it was 100 something degrees, you know, aligning the panels, double checking the work, moving the jig. It pretty much took me 2 full days just to do these cutouts. There were a few other precise cuts that I needed to make later on in the project, and I found out that a router works pretty well if you don't have to go the full depth. And if you do need to go all the way through, a Japanese flush cut saw was pretty effective. So if I ever make one of these again, I will probably use that flush cut saw to make all these cutouts for the joinery. But unfortunately for me, that was 2 days that I will never get back. Since the insulation panels were slightly smaller than the overall dimensions of the camper, there were a few panels I had to flat join together, and I just did a couple of test fits, made sure everything was correct, and was sure to correctly label them before the glue up, so I didn't have to figure out the puzzle as the glue was being applied. Quick tip, random shapes are a good way to label the panels because there's only one way for them to be oriented. During my research, Gorilla Glue was pretty much the overall winner when it came to joining this type of insulation. In spots where you had really good contact between the insulation, it seemed that the clear Gorilla Glue was the best choice. Just to be sure, I did a few test fits and tested the strength of the joints, and every single time the insulation broke before the glue joint did. Most of us don't have 10-foot long pipe clamps, so in this instance, duct tape got the job done. Once the panels were built up to their final dimensions, I was able to do one last test fit for the overall pod, which meant I was ready to start the build on the inside. If you're enjoying this video and you want to see more, be sure to like and subscribe to my channel so you can catch some more cool outdoor content. In the next few episodes, I'll be building out the interior of my camper, making a big mess with some electrical and some wiring and lights, and what you've all been waiting for, the walkthrough of my final camper. Be sure to share this video and leave any comments below, any questions you might have. And always a big thanks for checking out Trail in Pursuit.